aviation growth, because what we hear, instead of institutional infrastructure being built to that level, we only hear, we'll set it right. Accidents happen, we keep moving. So till we have a look at the institutional infrastructure, could we design, rethink an aviation industry which is more profitable and sustainable? That's my first question. Second is institutional cohesiveness. Cohesiveness is that we think as an airport aviation system. Is it targeted for an affordable passenger regime and a viable airline industry? Can it happen both together? When we today look at the DGCA's policies of 60% seat is taken off from charging, and they come up with many such directives, have we ever thought that the same airlines have lost $25 billion? So is there any way that we look at, listen, Tushar Jani has to fly to Bombay, he can afford 5,000-6,000, and there are millions of Tushar Janis. How does the system work to support a viable and affordable airline system, or which is good for passenger, viable for the airlines? We look at airline charging 30%, 60% charges, maybe they charge you $300 or $500. But have you looked at the ground handling charges recently have tripled in airports? Tripled. Where is that responsible? Because it is beyond perhaps the regulatory regime, because I thought ground handling is in the part of the regulatory regime, but it's not. Because there is arbitrariness in terms of ensuring that the ground handling charges go from one extreme to the other extreme. Who's going to pay for it? It's going to be paid by the airlines, and airlines don't have the ability to pass on. So when we have to look at institutional cohesiveness, I have requested many times that it's important to see that how can we create an affordable airline system and the airlines make money. Once you do that, trust me, the MROs will come. There is investable capital in building a cargo airliner, if not now, wide body in the future. But if you have a wrecked system, there is no way you could move forward to from where you are. So institutional cohesiveness is very important so that the whole ecosystem looks. What are we charging for airports? Is it affordable? What are we doing to our ground handling charges? What is happening to the unregulated charges at the airports? What is happening to our training system? All of it combined gives Indigo and Air India the ability to charge passengers, and they can't pass on. So institutional cohesiveness. And third, I would say, before we talk about the potential of a cargo, which I said, and MRO, which is exceptional, is who is accountable? Where does the institutional accountability lie? We have seen with air safety, I don't think there is anybody who is responsible. We could, luckily security is fine. As for airline losses, I don't think anybody bothers. You want airlines to continue to invest in wide body planes. You want new airlines to come in. But you're not solving the core problem. There's an unviable business. And Tatas have seen recently 50,000 crores of losses till March 26. So it's important to say that who is accountable? And that institutional accountability would determine whether the cargo industry is an industry for the future linked to our potential, and, for example, the MRO industry is linked to our potential in terms with respect to our future. Now, why do I say it's important? COVID has devastated the airline industry in India for 2 years, potentially 2.5 years. What came after that, as Sharad was saying just now, that a small component which takes 6 hours took 15 days because of the supply chain. Supply chain is not just on the engine issues, but even on seats. Today you may have the money, but you can't get a seat. It takes 2-3 years. So after COVID of destruction, when we got into a supply chain issues, engine reliability issues, all of us are aware of. And now in the last 1 year, we have a Pakistan war, the airspace is closed. The cost of it could be roughly about 3,000 crores. And it changes the dynamics, makes flying to Dubai, to United States, much more significantly quicker than what you do from India. Now, obviously, that's a government decision. We cannot argue with that. And now we have this Iran war. And frankly speaking, it's good that the government took a decision of absorbing the ATF, otherwise we would have had double or more than double of the FS. If this war continues, ladies and gentlemen, we could have maybe doubles of the losses that we saw last fiscal. Who's going to pay for it? I don't know. So when we formulate policy, it's my request, and everybody at FAST only, I've been speaking and regularly wherever government gives an opportunity to speak, is that kindly take aviation very seriously. It is underachieved right now because there are fundamental flaws and gaps in our policy making, regulatory issues. Is ERA functional? We may need to ask. How can we reform DGCA? We have been talking about it for 30 years, 20 years, 15 years. What will it take to reform? How do we make air safety accountable? The rest of it, frankly speaking, which was achieved in the cargo and the airline industry, was some dedication by the Ministry of Civil Aviation at that point of time. And as I said, Vandaji almost took personal interest in it, in spite of not having the institutional architecture in place, but she went about knocking every door, and whatever the results saw were in front. So let's think, and Tushar used this word, we think rethink cargo, I think rethink aviation. Rethink how airlines would be viable. Rethink how the PAX cargo and the MRO and other logistics and everything else will fall in place. But we don't have a viable airline system. But does it concern an airport operator? Does it concern a ground handling company which has tripled the charge? Does it concern the policy making framework which charges arbitrarily 60%? Can you look at what Ryanair is doing? Can you look at it in global practice as to how these things are done? If you do a zero baggage, then there is a problem. If you charge passengers more, there is a problem. And we were discussing whether airline is a social service or not. The customer has to adjust if he decides to fly. You can, at times like this when the fuel price goes up or there are problems, you can bring a stabilization fund, air stabilization fund, which could come and say that, okay, we will give airlines X amount of money from the exchequer, rather than doing like this. So in specific terms, if we get down interested in creating a world-class airline business, aviation business in India, we should rethink aviation. Second, why we should rethink aviation, that's my view, and I may be out of sync with all of you. We have ordered so many planes. All of them are going to come in next 5-7 years. Whether they get deferred now in the current circumstances, I don't know. I have a challenge that does India have a consumption to absorb 2x the capacity in 5 years? Because it took us 90 years to reach 170 million and domestic and 70 million international. Is it possible that in 5 years we can add 170 million? Where are those consumers? So that's again a request to the policy makers, and I was told that the government is going to be debriefed. Frankly speaking, in many ways this government has done an exceptional job, because the institutional integrity of aviation has cleaned up completely under this regime. But the state of the industry that we are in, we need to look at where we are and how things are and how can we rectify. And honestly, if we miss this time, let's say, God forbid, in the industry loses another 30,000-40,000 crores in a year or so. It can't recover. It's impossible for anybody to have an appetite to invest more, or new corporate companies to come and invest. So if we are going to rethink, we must rethink now and say, today is a time, because we are energy dependent on Middle East. We are connectivity dependent on Middle East. Our cargo 50% goes through Middle East. Now, if there is any structural problem in the Middle East and in that region, what do? Who has the capacity to take this cargo? You may talk about route diversification, but where is that route diversification? You may talk about hybrid logistics, whatever we will talk about. How will that 50% be absorbed by Indian carriers? So it's important that we rethink where we are now. And it is important on the private sector as well as the government to work together in terms of finding a way out. First, acknowledging there could be a deeper problem than we are in, and then we can do the rest of the things. So from the current structure of a cargo, and we had Yashpalji here, so it's very, and Tushar. So are the supply chain which are constrained, will that get broken again like we saw during COVID? And it will be in 5 years, first time that the supply chain got devastated in succession. What will be its impact? You already have delays, stranded cargo, logistics cost could exceed 30%. And the manufacturing and